Welcome to the Inside Circle podcast, where your host, Eldra Jackson III, and his guests get personal about prison and transformation in all of its forms.
I keep reminding myself that I've got the key, and I'm the only one who can set me free.
This is Inside Circle, where your truth will set you free.
Hello, folks, and welcome to the Inside Circle podcast. Today, we have with us Mr. Edwin Lee. Edwin describes himself as a human being that struggled his entire life with believing that he wasn't good enough and that he wouldn't amount to anything. Edwin once punished himself for every little mishap in his life because he thought being perfect was how he'd receive love. After being incarcerated for over 15 years, today Edwin now loves himself. He's transformed his suffering into sensitivity that allows him to be connected to a spirit of love for self and with others. Good day, Edwin. How are you doing, sir?
I'm good, Eldra. Thanks for having me. I'm still surprised I wrote that. It doesn't sound like my writing, man, but it's me, you know. You got to give myself some credit right there.
It's your writing. It's your writing. You wrote it, and knowing that you wrote that and hearing that you wrote that, where does that come from? Say more about, you know, where some of those thoughts were developed, where some of those thoughts and beliefs come from.
So growing up, right, I've constantly wanted to achieve the love and the attention from my parents because I idolized my parents growing up. But given the circumstances of my parents' life and everything that they were trying to do as first generation immigrants in America, they grew up in a different culture, right? So when they came to America, they were just trying to provide a different life for me. And in that process, unfortunately, a lot of their time was spent on working and grinding, trying to give me the life that they didn't have. And in doing so, their priorities was in a different place, right? Because I grew up as an only child. So I was extremely lonely a lot of the times. And I just wanted to kick it with my parents because I love my mom and my dad at an early age, but they were just constantly focused on work. So when I was a little kid and I started to recognize how lonely and how much attention I wanted from them that I wasn't getting, I started to form this narrative in my mind that my parents ain't around because it's my fault. I must be wrong because this is why they're not spending time with me. And I couldn't really conceptualize the fact that, mom and dad they trying to survive and they trying to provide a life for me. They trying to keep this roof over my head and clothes on my back and food on the table because that's a lot of the things that they didn't have in China growing up. So they thought that by giving me the life of everything they didn't have, all of these external things, they didn't have a roof over their head. They didn't have a stable amount of food every day. They were struggling. So they wanted to give me all that. But I realized that I didn't care about that. I'm a very sensitive individual who needs love and connection in my life. And at the time as a child, I didn't really have many friends. So I wanted that love from them. And because I couldn't get that, this very, very ingrained belief early on that I'm not enough, it started to form and it started to manifest in many, many different toxic, negative, maladaptive ways in my life. And I remember as a little kid, right, I was in second grade. One of the things my parents always wanted for me was to do good in school, to have a really good education. It's a very stereotypical Chinese fucking way of living life, right? But education, there's a very high value placed on that. And all my cousins who were like me, they were second generation, all went to Ivy League colleges. And I was the black sheep of the family. I just didn't do good in school. I don't know if I had some type of learning disability, but school just wasn't for me early on. But that's always what my parents wanted from me. And when I was in second grade, there's something called a STAR test in the Bay Area. I don't know if this is the testing system they use across the state, right? But I had gotten mediocre percentages. I had gotten C's across the board. And I was proud of myself. I ain't gonna lie. I was like, man, I did pretty good because I thought I was gonna do way worse. And when my parents looked at the report card, Like, man, you need to do better than this shit. Like, what the fuck is this? We don't work we don't work this hard for you to get fucking C's. And when I heard that, it crushed me, Eldra. It crushed me, and like it crushed my self-worth, because I thought that was like one of the first moments where I could actually make my parents proud of me. And instead, it was like, whew, that tiger parenting came out. I was like, nah, you need to do better. But I internalized that, man. I internalized that, and I just, at that point, the story started to play out in my mind. Like, dude, I can't do this. I can't make them happy. So it sort of just perpetuated like this lack of effort for me in school, and I sort of gave up. And at that point, I started to resent my parents. I started to resent them. I started to be embarrassed by them. I started to be humiliated by them, all while feeling like these are the most important people in my life. So love became very confusing for me, Eldra, because I knew that they were my parents. I knew they brought me into this world, but I carried so much pain and suffering with the people that I thought that I could love the most in my life. So that's a little backstory of where it started as a little kid. And of course, all of these behaviors manifested into like, you know, my lifestyle as a gang member and as a criminal and as a drug addict. So.
Yeah. So yeah, let's not gloss over that, because I heard in there, and first of all, thank you for sharing. And I heard in there where, you know, the genesis was of the self-talk and the beliefs and the struggles around self-worth, and where the resentment started. And, you know, you kind of said what it led to, you know, criminal behavior, life as a gang member, drug addict. What was the progression? How do you go from, you know, being a student, being raised in a Chinese American home, and then going into all of those things? Because it didn't happen overnight.
No, it didn't. So this is a trip, right? So when I started doing really good, bad in school, like my generation of Asian American kids, well, not just Asian Americans, but my generation, we grew up in this technological boom, right? So during the era of the internet, this is a trip when I tell people, but I was playing a video game called Counter-Strike. It's a first-person shooter, an online multiplayer shooting game. And I had actually met a lot of people in the San Francisco area from Chinatown who was playing this game too. And we were all kids that would be on. I used to skip school, so we'd be on in the middle of the afternoon, just playing this game. and I remember just being in the chat. I'm like, man, how old are y'all? What are y'all doing? And they're like, shit, we 13, we 14 years old. I'm like, why ain't y'all at school? And they would be like, why ain't you at school? I was like, shit, because I don't want to be. And things just progressed, and I really built a connection with these individuals off this fucking video game, right? And we start kicking it in Chinatown, because, you know, a lot of us grew up in Chinatown. So as we're kicking it, we're just literally chilling out on the streets, not doing shit, but just smoking cigarettes, hanging out on the block. And we're literally just chopping it up. But as I'm kicking it with them, I feel peace and calm, because it's just like, these are people who I feel like understand me. These are people who I feel like have a similar upbringing to me. I didn't notice at the time because I'm just a teenager, right? And this comes off from like my self-reflection. But I realized that, like, you know what? These are people who have similar freaking backgrounds as me. And I feel a connection to them because we look the same. Our parents are very similar. So it's just like, I naturally vibe with them. Yeah. And then I remember, so in Chinatown, right, there was always different cliques. There was people around, like, there's a 14-year-old kids chilling, selling fireworks around the block, kicking it on Jackson Street. And then there's of course the older kids, right, who are 16, 17, 18 years old, the next generation above us. They start asking us to come around. I was like, what's up? Come check out some of the spots we're at. Come check out some of what we're doing. Because I naturally see the lifestyle that they live, you know. They got some cute females around them. You know, they're running around Chinatown, they're slinging, they're doing good for themselves. I see who they're talking to. They're talking to the older heads, and I see like the type of respect that they get. So I was like, man, that's a pretty good look. I want some of that power. I want some of that respect, you know, that they get. Not just from females, but just naturally on the streets and the way they carry themselves. They have like this type of bravado. Like, they looked like they was a shit, and they walked like they was a shit.
Yeah.
And naturally, I felt like, man, this is what I need, because I don't want to feel weak. I don't want to feel like a powerless little kid, man. Because at that time, I was, and I didn't have any guidance in my life, and I needed that. So I naturally gravitated towards my homies who I was kicking it with, and the older homies, because I thought that I did want what they had at that time. So I just made a decision, I think, to go get it, because I couldn't do good in school. I couldn't be like my cousins. So it's just like, man, let me do it this way then. Let me see if I can have some type of control over my life by doing these things.
Yeah. Yeah. That control, can I have control over my life by doing these things? And then you find yourself in prison.
Yeah.
And somebody else has control over your life. What was that like?
Honestly, that was a trip, right? Because a ton of the shame that I carried was gone. I'm not a stupid motherfucker. So it's just like, when I realized, like, damn, I really like thought I wanted to live as a gang member or as a drug dealer. So I'm kicking it on the block, doing all this stupid shit, hurting all these other people for respect and power. And now look at me. I'm sitting in prison with a 20-year sentence. And I have these CEOs that can tell me when I eat, when I shower, when I can use the phone. So ultimately, I wanted control over my life, right? But every decision that I was making in my life led to the consequences of me having very little control over my life, because now I'm deemed someone in society, some antisocial person in society, where my decisions lead to like the harm of a lot of people. So now I got to be put away in a box.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And I was never one of the people who like blame my circumstances for what I did in prison. Because when I got sentenced, I made a remorse statement. I made an impact statement to my victims, because I wanted to let them know that I know what I did was fucked up to you and your family, once I recognized how much y'all was hurt and how much damage I caused you. And in knowing that, I'm the reason why I'm in prison, man, before I got into my journey of self-help and transformation, right? That was very heavy for me, because so much shame has been instilled in me in my life from my parents. Do the right thing, do good in school. And every decision that I had, like, I won't say every decision, but most of my decisions leading up to that point of me coming to prison, that's on me, you know? So knowing that I had put myself in that type of situation was extremely painful, was extremely heavy. Like, I really started to be in this place where I hated myself for putting myself in prison. And I hated myself for knowing how much damage I caused other people, especially my own family and loved ones.
Yeah. And so how do you deal with that? How do you deal with that hate for self? How do you come to terms and begin to reconcile with what you're responsible for?
Man, so it happened very, very differently in different phases of my life, right? Because early on, when I was in my dysfunction, when I was in prison, man, I was always playing with a cell phone. I sort of gave up on myself, right? And there was just too much pain in my life. And I had gotten sober in 2015. So during that time, right, I wasn't using drugs anymore. However, I was still conducting myself in a way where I couldn't really deal with all of the shit that I had going on in my life. So while I'm on the yard, right, I'm going to gamble, I'm going to play with cell phones, and I'm going to involve myself in prison politics. Because you know what? I need to do something with my time. And because when I'm in that cell and when we're on lockdown, and if I don't have a cell phone or if I don't have something distracting me, my mind was just ruminating all the time, bro. And it was just like, I don't know. I had a lot of suicidal ideations. Like, I just felt really, really worthless in that cell a lot of the times, man, early on. So did I cope with it well then? Absolutely not. That was the beginning stages of my incarceration. And I was probably doing that for like the good first I'll say 7 years of my incarceration, 7 to 8 years of just, I call it like being a zombie.
Yeah.
I'm just on autopilot, man. You know, like when you're on the yard, right? You know how like you can see like the homies or yourself. It's like a gaze you have where you just like stare off. You know, I call it the 1,000 mile gaze. I don't know if someone named it that, but it's just like this look. And now that I understand psychology, it's like I'm dissociating, right? I'm not in the present moment because the present
Hmm.
moment and everything around me is just too fucking much. So it's just like I escape outside of myself and I just stare off. And I used to do that all the time, and I used to see people doing that all the time.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I realized how
So
much
how
stuff.
do you come out of that?
Yeah, how'd I come out of that? Man, look. So when I was in 2018, when I was at Solano, there's a program I was in called Delancey Street. And they had a building. They had a separate building on the yard, on A yard at Solano, where people could live and could program. And I knew about Delancey Street because I was in a program in county jail that was based off of Delancey Street, and they had a couple of Delancey Street counselors in there, and they had laced me up to this program being opened eventually. But I was in county jail in 2010, so that was way later down the line, right? But I knew about it. So in 2018, I decided to give myself a shot, right? I was like, man, let me see what this is about. So I put in a letter to enter this program, and I would say that this was like the beginning stages of my rehabilitation because I had entered
Hmm.
a program where there was a lot of accountability held for incarcerated individuals in there. Like you would be living in there. However, it's a different type of structure there now. You're going to attend like the groups that are going on in there, and you're going to do your best to hold each other, quote unquote, accountable. And I did this at the time because I was still carrying a lot of fucking like, I was still carrying a lot of beliefs like, man, ain't nobody gonna tell me shit about my own life or ain't nobody gonna tell me how to do time. So I was really putting myself in an uncomfortable situation by allowing other people to like point out things to me that I didn't really want pointed out. So that was like the beginning stages of my rehabilitation, and having that type of support system was, it felt a little different and a little awkward, right? Because I'm so used to being around gang members, and what we talked about is like the work we put in or ways to hustle and how we can make money. So there was no self-help talk jargon, no accountability, no doing the right thing, no consideration of like, hey, do you want to do something different with your life? This is how you do it. You want to go to this group, yada, yada, yada. So being in this type of environment now, it really pushed me to the limits of just knowing or experiencing something different other than like the typical culture of the prison yard as an active gang member. And I was doing this while on an active yard still. And a lot of these individuals looked down on the program. They talked, like a lot of people talked about me. A lot of my own homies talked about me like, oh man, he in Delancey Street now. He ain't with us. You know what I mean? He's soft now. And I had to really like come to grips with myself. Like, damn, do these people love me? Like my whole life, I thought I was receiving love from these people, right? But at the end of the day, like I made this decision to try something new for myself. And I was extremely afraid of this because it was so outside of what I knew. So I had to start dealing with the realization or coming to grips with like who really loves me in my life, who really cares about me. And in having these type of reflections with myself, I started to begin to learn how to put me first and how to put myself first in my recovery. And like that program was like the catalyst that sort of kicked that off. And it began my journey of rehabilitation and transformation.
Yeah. Yeah. And so you're on your journey of rehabilitation. You're changing. You're living a different life now, and I'm assuming you're on the back end and getting ready to go home. What was that like?
Oh man. Uh, you know what, Eldra? Like I was on the back end, right? But at that time, so in 2018, when I was in that program, my release date was it was still pretty far away. I was still banking on like my YOP date because that was before like the 66% kicked in. That was still when 85% was alive. So my stretch, I thought I was still gonna be doing a little bit more time because I had caught more time in prison too. So I guess, yeah, I was on the back end, but I knew that if I was going to bank on this YOP board date to go home a little early because I had a 20-year sentence, I'd need to like prepare more. I'd really need to like really focus on my rehabilitation and prepare. Like I wasn't a lifer, but I had this mindset where like, let me prepare for my freedom like I am a lifer. So I started going to therapy. I started going to self-help groups, and it was challenging. It was really challenging because I felt like I was constantly on like a grind now because I had transitioned from like being on the yard and bullshitting to really working on myself and focusing on my education. Because at that time I had enrolled in college, Lassen Community College. Never forget about that. And I had enrolled into therapy, and I'm an extremist, right? So I jumped from one extreme to the end. I was an extremist as a gang member, so now I'm gonna be a fucking extremist with my self-help. Like this, that work ethic, like that my parents had, I feel like that spirit was inside of me. So I used all that, and I started just investing myself fully on my self-help and on my rehabilitation. And it was very challenging because I was still battling with myself. Because I still thought about the homies. I still thought about my criminal lifestyle. And I still thought about selling drugs. And I was still dealing with all the rage I had inside of me as a gang member. All that was still alive in me. Like I felt like it was an identity crisis because although I'm doing something new, it's just like, man, is this really me? I was on the fence. You know what I mean?
So where'd that go? How'd you get off the fence?
Oh, man. So I left Delancey Street, right? And I signed up for a program called OMCP. OMCP is it's a program to become an alcohol and drug counselor. And I went through that process and I completed it. And to be in OMCP, I needed to transfer to the level 2 yard. So I had been used to living in a cell most of my term. So knowing that I would have to transition to a level 2, it took me like about a year and a half to really commit to OMCP because I was battling with the idea of like, damn, can I live in a dorm with all these other motherfuckers? You know, because I had a feeling like this would be challenging because I felt comfortable in the isolation of being in a cell. Being in a cell brought me comfort. It's a trip. Lockdowns brought me comfort. So being in an open space like that, I didn't know if I was ready for it. But once again, just took a leap of faith, signed up for that program, and I really felt like that program was another catalyst that helped me take another step up in my recovery and my rehabilitation because I had to go through a 7-month program, a substance use group, and I was with the same group of individuals who were also working towards the same goals. So I'm in like this circumstance now where I have other individuals who are actually working on themselves just like me. It's positive, you know? I'm starting to feel a little bit more optimistic about my life, despite all the bullshit that I got to deal with living in a dorm and despite my aversion towards that. And I mention all of this to say because when you complete OMCP, when you pass the test, you have to earn 2,080 hours, like some hours in group to really complete it, to get your certification as a certified drug counselor. So everybody knows in OMCP, once you sign up, once you finish it, you can get sent to any prison in California afterwards. And at that time, Solano was an active prison. It was one of the last few GP prison yards. So, in knowing this, there was a chance that I could get transferred to an NDPF yard or an SNY yard. But going into OMCP, I signed a contract in accepting the fact that that's okay. Like, this is what you signed up for, you know? So in knowing that I signed my name to be an OMCP, it's like this could be a potential, even though I don't want it to happen. And I ain't gonna lie, I'm gonna put OMCP on front, right? Because a lot of people sign up for this program or trying to manipulate their way into not transferring to an SNY or NDPF yard, you know, because some people are so active while they're going through this program. And I was also one of them. Tried tooth and nails to not get transferred out. I wanted to stay in Solano when I finished OMCP, but they were like, nah, you got, so a CC3, which is the captain, they want you at CMF. They requested you. And, you know, I knew CMF was, you know, it's every prison has its own labels, right? Whether they're true or not. And CMF was one of those yards where there's a big DOP population. It was labeled quote unquote all bad, you know? And I was about to go there. So I had a tough decision to make about going to CMF. And I really sat with myself.
And for those who are listening who may not recognize the in-house jargon, EOP is?
Oh, enhanced outpatient programs. Yeah, for people who need extra assistance with their mental health struggles.
Yeah.
And at that time, yeah, I didn't understand that there were individuals who needed that type of support while locked up. So I was ignorant then. But yes, CMF is an there's a huge EOP population. So I had to sit with myself because for me, I didn't want to go to that type of prison because I was still worried about what everyone else thought of me sometimes. So ultimately, I ended up going to CMF. I sort of just forced myself to deal with it then. And in preparation for that, when I told the homies, like, hey, before I left, I'm going to CMF, you know? And they were like, as an Asian American gang member in prison, there's politics. However, the politics ain't as serious, yet there's still like this looming fear though, like what's going to happen to me? And I remember like my homies telling me like, hey man, because by the time I was in OMCP, I was walking the straight and straight. I wasn't messing around as much. So they gave me credit for that. So they was like, look, just make sure you don't come back. Because if you come back, you know what time it is. And for people who don't understand the jargon who are listening to this, it means that once I go to a sensitive needs yard from an active yard, I am no longer considered an active gang member in prison, which means if I come back, I'm labeled no good. And the consequences of that are I can get hurt, I can get killed for it.
Yeah.
So I had a tough decision to make because once I go to CMF, like my whole identity as a gang member, both from my past and in prison, that's over with. That's really over with. No more.
Yeah.
And I decided it's time. Let's do this. I'm going to really I don't know what I did. I had no idea what was to come in my journey, but I knew that this is my opportunity to make a decision for myself to completely let go of a lifestyle that did me no justice growing up. And I did it.
Yeah.
So now I'm at CMF. Yeah. And now that I'm in CMF, I really, really need to look at like my own personal beliefs, my personal biases that I've developed about human beings, because growing up in the subculture and that I did, growing up as a gang member, I had developed a tremendous amount of distorted beliefs about other human beings. I was extremely racist. I was elitist in the sense that I believed that my people, Asian gang members, were above everybody else. No, I didn't see other people as human beings. That was my conditioning from prison. And when I got to CMF, there were no more like racial barriers in that sense. I could talk to another person of a different race. I could eat with them. Shit, I can be in the same shower as them because you shared showers with people. Whereas on active yards, that's not how it was. I was no longer in the 1960s in prison. You know what I'm saying? I had to really get to know other people of different races and different colors, creeds, and cultures. And that was a culture shock for me. That was a culture shock. And at that moment when I got to CMF is when I realized how much damage I had did to myself from my lifestyle. Like not just the physical external damage I caused to others, but the psychological turmoil in my own perception and how I saw life and other people. But I started to regain my humanity because of Inside Circle.
Yeah, that's it's a trip, man. You know, to hear you talk about the move and the parallel, you know, making the parallel like, okay, I'm going to another prison, and it's like I'm going from the 1960s to modern day times. And that's a perfect way, to describe it for those who may not be in the know. So a question that I have, man, is, we've kind of gone through the journey of growing up and some of the factors that led to your belief system, your stinking thinking.
God, my stinking thinking.
How you wound up, in prison, and what that journey looked like in prison. Can you speak a little bit about being in the midst of the transition coming back out into society, because you're still deep in it? How's that for you?
Oh my gosh. So I got out November 12th, 2025. Reentry has been like, when I was inside Eldra, all I could think about was my fucking freedom, right? All I could think about was like stepping outside of these walls, getting the fresh air, feeling the sunshine, being in nature, because being around so much concrete, it's just like, man, I'm tired of concrete. I'm tired of cement. So when I got out, there was a huge sense of freaking awe and wonder by like the most little things, being able to drive, being able to go out for a walk when I want, being able to eat whatever I want, being able to work, being able to go to school, seeing beautiful women everywhere and knowing that I could talk to them if I wanted to. However, those were just like, now that I'm out here and that those things have become normalized, I'm realizing that reentry, it's very challenging. I put a lot of pressure on myself to succeed in life, Eldra. And people, when I was inside, there was like in my support systems and in my groups, everyone's talking about like, man, you ain't catching up. You rebuilding your life and you're starting all over again. And for me right now, I really struggle, Eldra, because I know that that is a truth that I carry, right? But there's also this other truth that coexists. Like, man, I do feel like I'm catching up. I do feel like I'm a little behind at times. I'm not gonna lie. Like, I feel like I have all of these responsibilities, because being inside, everything is taken care of for me. The structure. You have housing. You have food. You don't have bills. Now that I'm out here, I got bills. I have expenses. I really gotta take care of myself, and sometimes that can be very challenging. A part of me sometimes wishes I still had that type of structure so I wouldn't have to worry about this shit and I could just focus on me. But now that I'm out here and I'm living life, right? Like, and I'm pursuing all of my goals, it's like I've created this timeline on myself to accomplish everything by a certain time. And I do put a lot of pressure on myself to provide for myself, not only myself, but for my family, because I want to be able to give back to them. That's a part of my amends to my family and to all the people that I've harmed. And it's a lot of work. It's a lot of work because there's a honeymoon phase for me, there's a huge honeymoon phase about getting out of prison, right? Like the first, however long it is, month to 6 months is beautiful, but real life kicks in. Responsibilities kick in. Like, especially, I pride myself as being a provider and as a real man. And I really need to get it, to take care of my family and loved ones. And that's difficult. That's difficult because in this day and age, I can't just go out and sell drugs to make cash no more. I have to do everything legitimately. And things take time out here. And I really got to be patient for myself. And like sometimes, like everything I want seems farther and farther away. And I got to check myself. I got to check myself to be patient. And that's difficult. And not only that, relationships, ooh-wee, that's a whole, I feel like we can have like a whole hour-long conversations about the difficulties of a relationship coming fresh out of prison and being in isolation. Because I was in relationships in prison when I had a cell phone, right? But it's completely different being here in the present moment, having to be able to hold space for another woman, having to really understand and be empathetic and be loving towards another woman who is different from me, who has different values and different ideas about life. I didn't know how challenging that was going to be as well. Yeah.
What's been the most difficult part of your transition?
Honestly, relationships. being able to relationships has been the most difficult part about my transition, because not only because in these early stages, right, when I'm since I've been fresh out, I've changed a lot since I went inside. I'm no longer that little boy that went into prison, like, and in coming out as a grown person, there's a lot of things that I'm still figuring out in my own life. What do I enjoy to do? What are actually my core values that really mean something to me? Do I want a family? What do I want of do I want to what do I want in the next 5 years from myself from now? Like, what are all my goals, right? And those are very, very heavy subjects. Those are very heavy things to think about that probably require a lot of attention and a lot of time and a lot of effort, right? And I say all that to say, when you throw a relationship in with that gets really complicated, and that was a choice that those are choices that I made. Um,
Well,
but yeah, I feel like the relationship has stretched me. It's stretched my patience, it's stretched my tolerance. Um, but at the same time, it's painful, but it's beautiful too, because I have very strong moments. I have very, very strong moments of love and warmth and companionship with my partner. Yet when it's hard, when it's hard, when we have arguments, when things are emotionally charged between us, it can get difficult sometimes in trying to juggle, like, dealing with my own emotions while handling all my responsibilities. Because sometimes it would be easier to just say fuck it, but I know I can't say fuck it, and
yeah,
that's what's challenging.
yeah, yeah. Is there anything that we haven't covered that you would hope people know that you'd like to share with folks who are listening to this?
Oh wow, yeah. Um, I don't think people who haven't ever done time, who have loved ones who come out of incarceration, right? Um,
Mm-hmm.
Please know that I'll speak for myself. Since I've came out of prison, like, having my family around and having my girl around, it's and having this desire to really, like, make them proud and to really, like, cultivate these connections and restart them, right? It's been challenging, but please know that for me, as an incarcerated and formerly incarcerated individual coming out, we put a lot of pressure on ourselves. We put a lot of pressure on ourselves to really, like, to not just, some people get out and they need to survive. Some people come out with more support and they can actually, like, well, how do I say this? They're in a better position to succeed because they
Mm-hmm.
have more support, right? And if you
Mm-hmm.
fall under the category of having, like, a lot of support in your life, that's wonderful because your transition is going to be easier. But please know, not many people who are coming out of prison have that type of fortune, because unfortunately, a lot of people coming out of prison did very, very long stretches, especially long-term offenders. This is the demographic I come from. And we need more resources to support these type of individuals, because a lot of people who are locked up for long periods of time lose family members and they get out not having enough support. And these individuals are the ones who need extra resources and who need some more love in their lives, because they come out, and they don't know, like, they come out into these positions where life becomes very challenging because there's too much to adapt to in this life. Like, imagine individuals who do 40 years in prison and they don't know how to use a cell phone and they don't know how to navigate technology and they don't have any more family. Those individuals, I believe that, like, coming from the Bay Area, living in the area that we live in, there's no reason why they shouldn't have more support
Mm-hmm.
in their lives, and they need that assistance. It's
Yeah.
imperative. Yeah.
Mm. So on that note, as we look towards later on this year, the grand opening of the healing home, how important would it be for something like the Inside Circle Healing Home for folks coming back out here?
Oh my God, that would be absolutely imperative because Eldra, no disrespect to the elders in Inside Circle, right? But we got a lot of fucking OGs in Inside Circle, right? Who come from an older demographic, right? Who have been in prison for long stretches. Like our brothers in Inside Circle, if they have the opportunity to go to the healing home, they need that support. They need that love. They need that guidance, especially in navigating the world that we're in today and having that type of space where they don't have to deal with other individuals, where they can just like really take a breather and have a sense of independence and safety from the healing home. That would be extremely impactful for them. They need it. They need that type of support, and they need the opportunity to gain skills that the healing home would offer, especially in like the Inside Circle facilitation style, because it's magical. It's a type of magic that could fulfill them, and they would be able to give back to other people who need that type of healing, because we have a certain source in our spirit. And I'm speaking in the sense of we, right? When we go through the work, we have the ability to give that medicine back to other people. And the healing home would only help foster that source of medicine in themselves even more. And I really hope the healing home gets opened ASAP so our brothers can come out to that. I really, really do. Because when it is, I'm going to be there to guide them through whatever and support them through whatever they need. That's something that I'm going to take pride in myself. And that's like something I'm truly going to honor.
Yeah.
They need it, man. They need it.
I agree. I
They need
agree. So I got one more thing for you before we wrap up here, man.
Yeah.
Feel yourself get comfortable in your seat and in your body, and follow this next breath back into your body, and feel yourself begin to slip through time before you were hanging on the block, before you got those C's on the STAR test, and see young, innocent 5-6-year-old Edwin. What piece of wisdom would you offer him, knowing what you know today and having been through all you've been through? What does he need to hear? What does he need to know?
Man, like, you are you, I am you, and you are enough. That's it.
You are enough. That's magic right there.
Yeah.
Oh, man, it's been a pleasure, man, sitting with you. And looking forward to more, man. Keep doing what you're doing, man. And we're going to continue to create spaces to help the world heal itself.
Man, absolutely. Thank you for having me, man. And I can't wait to be a part of the journey, too. Don't leave me out of the magic, man.
Thank you, folks, for listening to another episode of the Inside Circle podcast. And if you like what you've heard here, and if you believe in the work that it is that we're doing in this world, this podcast is just a small sample of some of the work that we're doing in the world, trying to get out and create spaces where folks can find their own personal freedom. And it comes at a cost. It comes at a cost spiritually, it comes at a cost mentally, it comes at a cost emotionally, and the easy cost is financially. So if you've listened to us, over the last couple of years, and you've heard some things that have touched your heart, become a member, support Inside Circle. And it's very easy to become a member and support by becoming a recurring donor. So come on, jump on, become a part of the Inside Circle family, and become a recurring donor. It doesn't take a whole lot, but every little bit counts. Thank you.
Thank you for joining us at the Inside Circle podcast. If you've enjoyed this episode, please subscribe, rate, and leave us a comment on iTunes or wherever you listen. Follow us on Instagram at inside_circle and on Facebook at Inside Circle Org, all one word. Special thanks to the songwriter Rob Ricardo for his song, The Work. Join our mailing list and learn more about Inside Circle on our website at insidecircle.org. And remember, your truth will set you free.